Trusted my girlfriend with my mental struggles. She had me put in a psych hold, and now she tell me this. So yeah, I'm not exactly in the best spot right now. I'm 29, working this job that's supposed to pay the bills and give me some sense of purpose. But let's be real, it barely does either. I'm busting my ass for what? To barely scrape by? I'm pretty sure a lot of people reading this get what I'm saying. It's like you're just grinding away, hoping things will get easier, but they don't. And maybe for some people that's just life, right? But for me, it's been different lately, like way darker. I don't know exactly when this whole mental mess started. I mean, I'd love to say I was some super happy dude who suddenly woke up to a bad day and everything went downhill, but it's not that simple. It's more like a slow crawl into this weird dark pit. Like, one day you realize the thoughts you're having aren't just the regular man, this sucks kind of thoughts. They're like, what's the point, you know? And it's terrifying because I don't actually want to hurt myself. I'm not actively planning anything, but my mind keeps going there even when I don't want it to. It's like it's sneaking up on me when I'm not paying attention. It's what they call suicidal ideation, which basically means these thoughts just creep up, even though I have zero plans to actually do anything. I'll try to paint a picture for you because maybe some of you haven't been there, and it might sound overdramatic. It's like this constant weight on my mind. Some days I'd wake up and go to work, go through the motions, but inside it's like a switch flipped. Everything's numb, like I'm just going through the day on autopilot. It's weird because nobody can see it. To everyone else, I'm just the same guy, doing my job, showing up. But inside, it's like everything's gray, heavy, and no matter what I do, I can't shake it. I thought I could just push through, honestly. I mean, I've dealt with stress before, right? But this is different. Usually I just throw myself into work, keep busy, try to ignore the bad stuff, and hope it goes away. But no matter how hard I worked or distracted myself, these thoughts just kept creeping back in. It's like trying to keep a lid on a pot that's already boiling over. You can push it down for a while, but eventually it's going to spill. I'd get these thoughts too at the worst times. Like I'm standing at work, supposed to be paying attention, and suddenly my mind's just drifting off, thinking about how easy it'd be to just disappear. And I'd snap out of it, thinking, what the hell is wrong with me? But then it'd happen again, and again. It starts messing with your head. I'd go home and just sit there, trying to figure out why I can't shake it off. Why I can't just, I don't know, be happy? Or at least normal? It's this constant battle in my head and I'm losing. I know, it sounds dramatic, but if you've ever been there, you get it. And if you haven't, trust me when I say it's not something I'd wish on anyone. It's like being trapped in this invisible cage, and no matter what you do, you can't get out. Every day, it's just this fight to keep going, to keep pretending everything's okay when deep down, you know it's not. And the scariest part? I didn't tell anyone, not a single soul, because who wants to hear that? Who wants to be the person that people look at and think, oh, he's broken? So I kept it all in, hoping it'd just go away. And then came the worst days. These are the ones that really stick with me. I'd come home after a long day, exhausted, and just sit there staring at the wall. Not even thinking, just staring. My phone would buzz, people trying to reach out, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. It was like every ounce of energy I had was used up just to get through the day, and I had nothing left for anyone else. I'd sit in silence, sometimes for hours, with this voice in the back of my head whispering that it'd be easier to just give up. Not that I'd ever actually do it, but the thought was always there, lurking, like some shadow I couldn't get rid of. After a few months of this, I started to realize that maybe I couldn't handle this on my own. And let me tell you, that was a hard pill to swallow. I've always been the guy who deals with his own stuff, who doesn't rely on anyone else. But this was different. It wasn't something I could just shrug off or ignore. So, after a lot of back and forth in my own head, I finally decided to open up to my girlfriend. I mean, we've been together for 4 years, and she's always been there for me. If there was anyone who'd understand, it'd be her, right? So, one night, we're just sitting on the couch watching some mindless TV show, and I decided to go for it. I told her I'd been struggling lately, that things felt dark, and that I'd been having these thoughts. And let me tell you, that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I could barely get the words out. I was so damn worried about how she'd react, but I didn't have anyone else I could trust with this. She just sat there listening, and I thought, okay, maybe this'll actually help. I kept explaining, trying to make her understand that I wasn't planning anything, that I just needed someone to hear me out. And she nodded, said she understood, and I actually felt a bit of relief, like maybe I'd finally found a way to dig myself out of this hole. I thought, maybe this'll be okay, maybe I'll be okay. Looking back, maybe I shouldn't have expected so much. I mean, she's young, only 22, and probably didn't know how to handle something like this. But at that moment, I genuinely thought I'd done the right thing by telling her. For the first time in a while, I felt like maybe I wasn't so alone in this. I thought opening up was the first step to getting better, that I'd finally found a way to deal with these thoughts and move forward. But as I'd come to learn, things weren't that simple. So I left off where I finally opened up to my girlfriend. Honestly, I felt this weird sense of relief after telling her everything. Like maybe this was finally the first step to pulling myself out of that mental mess. But what happened next was something I didn't see coming at all. After our talk, I was feeling, I don't know, lighter, I guess? I figured I'd go grab some snacks and clear my head for a bit, so I told her I'd be right back. It was just a quick trip down the street, something to get my mind off things. I thought everything was fine between us, like maybe we'd broken through a wall or something. I wasn't expecting her to do anything drastic. But by the time I came back, the whole situation flipped in a way I'd never imagined. I pull into my driveway and immediately notice 2 cop cars parked outside my house. And I'm just sitting there in my car, staring at these flashing lights, totally confused. My first thought was maybe there was some kind of emergency in the neighborhood or something. But when I got out of the car, one of the officers approached me, and he had this look like he already knew exactly who I was. "Are you my name?" he asks, and I'm just nodding, still not processing any of it. I mean, my heart's racing, and I'm running through every possible thing that could have gone wrong. Then he says, "We got a call from someone concerned for your safety." Right then it clicked. I knew this wasn't about anything outside. It was about me. My girlfriend had called the cops on me, and suddenly that feeling of relief I'd had just a few minutes ago, completely gone. I felt betrayed, like I'd let her into my head, and she'd taken that trust and turned it against me. I tried to explain to the officers that it was a misunderstanding. I told them I wasn't planning on doing anything to myself, that I'd just been going through a rough time, and I'd talk to her about it thinking it'd help. But they weren't hearing any of it. They kept insisting that they were there to help and that it was for my own good. At this point, I was pissed. But what could I do? They told me they were going to take me to the hospital for a psychiatric evaluation, and it wasn't really up for discussion. I tried to argue, but it was like talking to a wall. One of them said, "Look, we're just here to make sure you're safe." Safe? I'd been sitting in my car, getting snacks, and now I was supposed to be some kind of danger to myself? It didn't make sense, but they didn't care about any of that. They just followed protocol. Then it hits me. If the cops are here, who else did she tell? And right on cue, my phone buzzes. It's my mom, freaking out in a million texts, asking me what's going on, why I'm in such a bad place, and all this stuff. Turns out, my girlfriend had called my parents too. I'm guessing she thought they'd support her decision to call the cops, maybe thinking this was what I needed or whatever. But all I felt was this wave of anger and frustration. The people who were supposed to be there for me, my girlfriend and my family, had somehow all turned into, I don't even know what, but definitely not the support I thought I needed. So there I am, being escorted by the cops to the hospital. I'm sitting in the back of a police car like some criminal, even though I'd done nothing wrong. I'm fuming, but I don't even know who I'm mad at more. My girlfriend for putting me in this mess, or myself for thinking I could trust anyone with what I was going through. We get to the hospital, and they bring me to this side area, and the nurse is already there waiting. She starts asking me a bunch of questions about my mental state, how I'm feeling, all that stuff. And I'm sitting there thinking, none of this is real. Like, this whole situation just feels like a twisted joke. I told the nurse straight up that I wasn't planning on hurting myself, that this was all some misunderstanding blown way out of proportion. But she just nods and says, "Well, we'll need to do a full evaluation to make sure." The whole time, all I could think was how everything just spiraled out of control. I'd opened up to my girlfriend, thinking it would help. And here I was in some cold clinical room being treated like a danger to myself. They took my phone, my wallet, everything. It felt surreal, like I'd somehow lost control of my own life just because I was honest for once. I mean, isn't that what everyone says to do? Talk to someone if you're struggling. But look where that got me. And of course, the waiting game started. I sat in this tiny, uncomfortable room for hours, with nothing to do but replay everything in my head, every thought, every detail of that conversation with my girlfriend. I kept wondering if there was something I could have said differently, something that wouldn't have set off this chain reaction. But no matter how I tried to make sense of it, it just didn't add up. She knew I wasn't actively planning anything, and I thought I'd made that clear. So why call the cops? Why call my parents? Why blow everything up? At some point, a doctor came in and started the whole evaluation process. He was calm, asked me about my thoughts, how long I'd been feeling like this, and all that. I answered as best as I could, but it's hard to explain something you're barely understanding yourself. I could see him jotting down notes, looking up every now and then, and it was obvious he didn't really get it. He kept asking questions in this clinical, detached way that just made me feel even worse. Like I was just another case he was trying to check off his list. By the time they finally wrapped up the initial evaluation, I was drained, both physically and mentally. I didn't have the energy to keep explaining myself, and I just accepted that nobody was really going to understand. They weren't interested in helping. They were just doing what they were supposed to do. Protocol, procedures, checklists. I was just another number to them. I'm not going to lie. Sitting in that room with nothing to do but stare at the walls, I felt betrayed. Completely. I kept thinking about my girlfriend, my family, the people who were supposed to care. I'd trusted them, opened up in a way I'd never done before, and now, here I was, alone in some sterile room, treated like a danger to myself when all I wanted was someone to actually listen, to understand. But instead, I was labeled and sorted into some category, and now they had me stuck in this mess. By the time they told me I'd have to stay for further observation, I wasn't even surprised. It was like the whole thing had taken on a life of its own, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I just sat there, feeling defeated, wondering if I'd ever be able to look at these people in my life the same way again. I'm not sure how to describe the feeling of being admitted into a psych ward, especially when you're there against your will. The second they took my phone and wallet, I realized how little control I had left. You think of hospitals as these places where they're supposed to help you, right? Well, this place didn't feel like help. It felt like prison. Everything was cold and gray, like the entire building was designed to drain whatever hope you had left. And the people? They treated you like you were already broken beyond repair. After what felt like hours of waiting around, they finally brought me to this cramped room that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 80s. It had a single bed with a thin mattress, a chair, and a tiny table. The walls were this faded beige color, peeling in spots, and there was this smell, a mix of bleach and something stale. I sat on the bed, staring at the walls, trying to wrap my head around how I'd ended up here. The staff, they didn't talk to you unless they absolutely had to. It's like they didn't see you as a person. Just another case they were dealing with. I tried asking one of the nurses how long I'd have to be here, and she just shrugged, mumbled something about evaluations, and walked away. No explanations, no real answers, just cold, blank stares and people moving around like you're invisible. Then came the worst part. My roommate. I don't know what I expected, but definitely not him. The guy was convinced he was some kind of god or prophet or something, always muttering to himself and occasionally screaming at the walls. First night in, I woke up to him smashing his head against the wall, leaving these bloody smears as he went. When I asked the staff if he was okay, they just brushed it off like it was no big deal. He does that sometimes, one of them said, completely unfazed. The whole experience was like that. There was no peace, no privacy, nothing that made you feel even a little bit human. The light stayed on 24/7, and someone checked on you every half hour, so sleep was impossible. I'd lie there, exhausted but unable to drift off, listening to the sounds of other patients shuffling down the hall, doors creaking, and that constant hum of fluorescent lights. Every noise, every shadow, it was like the place was designed to keep you on edge. Meals were another level of awful. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner were all this tasteless gray mush that they insisted was balanced. I tried eating it first, but I could barely get it down. After a day or so, I just stopped bothering. What was the point? It felt like I was being punished, like I'd done something wrong, even though all I'd done was open up to someone I thought I could trust. And then there were the meds. Oh man, the meds. The doctors had decided I needed something to calm me down, despite me telling them over and over that I wasn't a danger to myself. But it didn't matter. They had their system, and I was just another tick on their checklist. They handed me these pills without even telling me what they were. When I refused to take them, they just stared at me and said, "You either take these, or we'll have to use other measures." Basically, they were going to force feed me the stuff if I didn't cooperate. So yeah, I took them. And let me tell you, whatever they gave me, it was brutal. Within half an hour, I felt like my brain was wrapped in cotton. Everything was blurry and slow. I couldn't think straight. Couldn't even string together a full sentence. It was like I was floating somewhere outside myself, watching this whole nightmare unfold, but completely powerless to do anything about it. They'd call it treatment, but to me, it felt like they were stripping away any shred of control I had left. I spent 3 days in that place. 3 long, miserable days where the only thing I did was sit in that dingy room and stare at the walls. The staff tried to get me to talk, but I wasn't interested. I knew they weren't listening. Not really. I'd already told them the truth, but they didn't care. I was just another body they had to deal with. So I clammed up, refused to speak, and just waited for it to be over. On the second day, my parents and girlfriend came by to visit. I saw them through the tiny window in my room, talking to one of the nurses, probably asking to see me. But I didn't want to see them. I was done with them. They were the ones who put me here, who decided this was what I needed, without even asking me how I felt about it. So when the nurse came to tell me I had visitors, I just shook my head and said I wasn't interested. I could see the nurse's face drop, like maybe she thought I was being ungrateful or something. But I didn't care. I was angry. Angry at all of them for thinking they knew what was best for me. Angry that I'd let myself trust them enough to open up, only to have it backfire in the worst way possible. They didn't understand, and at that point, I wasn't sure I even wanted them to. Time felt strange in that place. It was like everything slowed down and blurred together. Hours felt like days, and every second I was there, I felt more and more trapped. It was like being in some kind of twisted purgatory where you're just stuck with no way out. The only thing that kept me going was knowing that eventually, they'd have to let me go. I hadn't done anything wrong. I wasn't a danger to myself, and they had no proof to keep me there. By the end of it, I was so mentally and physically drained that I barely recognized myself. I felt hollow, like whatever fight I had in me had been worn down to nothing. The doctors finally decided they didn't have enough to keep me any longer, and they told me I'd be released soon. But even then, they acted like they were doing me some kind of favor, like I should be grateful they were letting me go. All I could think was, I just want out. I wanted out of that place, away from those people, and as far from the whole experience as possible. They'd turned what was already a rough time in my life into something way worse, all because I trusted the wrong person. And as they took me out of that room and walked me down those bleak hallways one last time, I made up my mind about one thing. I was done with all of them. When they finally let me out, it wasn't some big relief like I thought it would be. I felt numb, like whatever part of me that should have felt grateful for being free had been left back in that psych ward. They handed me my stuff, my wallet, my phone, like I was some kid who'd just been punished and was finally allowed to go back outside. But the second I took my things, I just wanted to leave. I didn't say a word to any of the staff, didn't even look back. I was done with them, done with that place. And of course, there they were, waiting for me outside, my parents and my girlfriend. They all had these expressions like they were relieved but also worried, and I could already see it. The questions, the "Are you okay?" and "Did it help?" expressions written all over their faces. But I wasn't about to play into that. I'd already been through enough. I didn't owe them anything. They all started talking at once the second they saw me. My mom was asking if I was okay. My dad tried to give me one of those weird side hugs, and my girlfriend was going on about how she'd missed me, how she was glad I was safe now. And honestly, I just couldn't take it. I felt this wave of anger bubble up inside me. All I could see was them making that choice for me, deciding what was best without even listening. They'd thrown me in there like I was some project they needed to fix, and now they wanted me to pretend like everything was fine. I didn't say a word to them. Not one. I just brushed past them, started walking away. They kept calling my name, asking where I was going, but I didn't stop. I had too much going on in my head to even care at that point. I just kept walking, barely noticing that it had started to rain. Somehow, that felt right, like the whole world was matching my mood. Heavy, gray, cold. I didn't even care about the rain soaking through my clothes. It was like, after everything, getting wet was the least of my problems. I must have walked a good 3 miles before I finally got back to my place. I hadn't stopped once, hadn't even thought about getting a ride or calling a cab. I just walked, letting the anger and hurt push me forward, one step after another, until I made it back. By the time I reached my door, I was drenched and exhausted, but something about that walk felt like it cleared my head a bit. Or maybe I just pushed everything so deep down that it was like I couldn't feel anything anymore. Either way, I didn't care. I was home, and that's all that mattered. When I stepped inside, my girlfriend had followed me. I hadn't even noticed she'd trailed me back, but there she was, dripping wet, looking at me like I was some kind of wounded animal. "We need to talk," she said, but I was done with talking. I'd already said everything that mattered back when I'd opened up to her, and look where that got me. I didn't want to hear her excuses, her justifications. I didn't want to hear any of it. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "We're done." Just like that. No explanation, no trying to soften the blow. I was exhausted, drained, and I didn't have the energy to play nice. She started to cry, saying she'd done what she thought was best, that she'd only wanted to help me. But her idea of help had been throwing me in a psych ward without even asking me what I wanted. How was that supposed to help? How was I supposed to feel safe with someone who could just decide what's best for me like that, without even a real conversation? I told her she had until the end of the week to pack her stuff and get out of my house. It felt harsh, but at that moment I didn't care. She kept trying to explain, kept going on about how much she cared about me, but I'd heard enough. I'd trusted her, thought she'd understand what I was going through, and instead, she'd turned my life upside down. Maybe some people would say I was being too hard on her, but if they'd been through what I had, they'd get it. You can't just throw someone into a place like that and expect things to go back to normal afterward. After she finally left, I sat there in my empty apartment staring at the walls. It was quiet, so damn quiet, and for the first time I really let myself feel the weight of everything. All the anger, the betrayal, it all hit me at once. I felt alone, but in a way it was better than pretending to be surrounded by people who didn't really care about what I wanted. They'd all acted like they were helping me, but none of them had actually asked me what I needed. They just made that choice for me, like I wasn't even there. My phone started buzzing with texts from my parents, probably worried that I'd cut off my girlfriend like that, but I didn't even look at them. I was done. I'd spent so much time trying to make everyone else happy, trying to play nice, that I'd forgotten what it meant to actually look out for myself. And now, after everything, I didn't have the energy to deal with their guilt trips and their explanations. Over the next few days, my parents kept trying to call, sending these long, guilt-laden texts about how my girlfriend was just trying to help, how I should forgive her, give her another chance. They couldn't get it. They'd never understand what it was like to be locked up in that place, treated like I was broken just because I was struggling. I knew they thought they were doing the right thing, but to me, it felt like they'd taken the one thing I had left, my right to decide what I wanted for myself, and thrown it away. By the end of the week, my girlfriend had packed up her things and left. I didn't say goodbye, didn't even look at her when she walked out the door. I was past that. She'd made her choice, and I'd made mine. It was like a part of me had died back there, in that psych ward, the part that believed people could understand without judgment, without trying to control me. I didn't need people who thought they knew better than I did what was best for me. I didn't realize how freeing it would feel to finally set that boundary, to tell the people who had hurt me that they didn't get to decide my life anymore. Yeah, it left me alone, but at least I was alone on my own terms. And as strange as it sounds, that gave me a kind of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. So now I'm sitting here, finally by myself, and I can't shake this question. Was I the A*** hole? I mean, I'm aware this whole situation's messed up. I'm not blind to the fact that they thought they were helping me. My girlfriend, my parents, they did what they did because they care. I get that, okay? But it still feels like they all just completely bulldozed over me, over what I wanted and needed, and now I'm left with nothing but this huge mess, and everyone around me telling me I'm wrong. It's like, they thought they knew best, right? My girlfriend especially. I told her some really personal stuff I hadn't even really admitted to myself, and she took that as a green light to call the cops on me. I mean, who does that? She knew I wasn't planning to do anything drastic. I'd told her clear as day that I was struggling, but not actually in danger. And instead of actually listening to what I needed, she just went nuclear and dragged my family into it too, thinking that would somehow help. And my parents, man, they acted like they were so surprised, like they couldn't believe I was going through something like this. But I don't know. Part of me feels like they should have seen the signs. They know how rough work has been, how I've been drowning in bills, how every day has felt like a struggle lately. It's not like I'm hiding that part of my life. I mean, I live paycheck to paycheck. They knew that. They knew my job's been grinding me down. And when it finally got too heavy, and I reached out, they all acted like I was a problem that needed fixing, rather than just someone who needed a bit of understanding. So now I've cut everyone off. My girlfriend's gone, and I've blocked my parents' numbers. I made it clear that if they keep pushing, I'll go to the cops for trespassing. And yeah, I know that sounds extreme. I'm aware that to anyone else, I probably sound like a guy who's lost it. But if you'd been through what I went through, you'd get it. When the people you trust most decide that their version of help involves locking you up, it changes things. It changes how you see them and how you see yourself. And then there's the money side of things. Because of course, insurance didn't cover my little trip to the psych ward. So now, on top of everything else, I'm saddled with a $10,000 bill for something I never wanted, never asked for, and definitely didn't need. Every time I think about it, it makes my blood boil. Like, I was already buried in bills, struggling to make ends meet, And now I have this giant debt sitting over my head because my girlfriend thought she was saving me. If I didn't laugh, I'd cry, honestly. People keep telling me I should reach out to the hospital, try to get the bill reduced. I get it. It's practical advice. But the whole idea of even dealing with them again just fills me with dread. I don't want to talk to anyone there. Don't want to relive any of it. It's like that place left this scar. And every time I think about doing something about the bill, it just reopens. Maybe it sounds ridiculous, but it's the truth. Right now, I'd rather let that bill sit unpaid than have to explain myself to some billing department that probably doesn't care anyway. And then there's the question of what comes next. Because I'm sitting here with pretty much no support system left. I'm on my own, and that's fine. It's better than having people around who don't actually get it. But there's this nagging thought in the back of my head, this tiny, annoying voice saying, what if they were right? What if you were overreacting? And I hate that thought, because it makes me doubt everything. It's like they've got this grip on me, even after I've pushed them all away. Like no matter what I do, I can't fully escape their version of help. A few days ago, I was scrolling through Reddit, trying to distract myself, and I came across a post from someone else who'd gone through something similar. They talked about feeling betrayed by the people closest to them, about how nobody actually understood what they needed. And I swear, it was like looking in a mirror. I wanted to reach through the screen and tell them I got it, that I knew exactly how they felt. It made me wonder if maybe I'm not as alone in this as I think. Maybe there are other people out there who've been through the same crap, who've had their trust shattered by the people they thought were supposed to care. But at the end of the day, that's all online. None of those people know me, and I don't know them. And as much as it helps to know that others get it, it doesn't really solve anything. I'm still here, still alone, still carrying this weight that nobody else seems to understand. And maybe that's my new reality. Maybe it's just me now, figuring things out one day at a time. I keep replaying that day in my head, wondering if I could have done something differently. Maybe if I'd explained things better, made it clearer that I just needed someone to listen, none of this would have happened. Or maybe it was inevitable. Maybe they would have done this no matter how I'd framed it because they couldn't see past their own fear. I don't know. And maybe I'll never know. All I know is that now, I'm the one left dealing with the fallout. So here I am, asking the internet, am I the a-hole for cutting them all off? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like the only option I had left. I mean, if I can't trust the people who were supposed to have my back, then what's the point? I'm not going to keep them around just to make myself feel better. I need people in my life who actually listen, who see me as more than just a problem to fix. And if that means going it alone for now, so be it. Maybe one day I'll be ready to let them back in. Maybe, when enough time has passed, I'll be able to look back and see things differently. But right now, I'm still angry, still hurt, and still carrying that $10,000 reminder of their help. So was I the A*** hole for saying enough is enough? Because honestly, I don't think I am. But I'm open to hearing what you guys think.